Okay, cool. So for those who are watching this recording, this is not formal. This is informal, helping out the project CM team on how to build UI components. So I'm going to go ahead and present. Please bear with me that my computer does slow down a bit once I start doing screen capturing. So, right, you guys can all see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so to give context, we had a question come through on Slack from Tomoya. He asked a great question, which was, can we have a well-organized component? How do we build a well-organized component? And he asked to have a reference, and I jumped in and said, I think it's a great idea. We should probably do a little video around this. So let's go ahead and load up the basic designs that we have so far. You guys should all have access to this. I'm trying to separate it out into. We're going to have kind of 3 projects. We're going to have the www project. Sorry, it's really slow. We're going to have the actual app. So I'm working on the designs for this. So there'll be plenty of work for the UI people. And then we're also going to have the UI component library. So there's only two items in here at the moment. So do you guys have a preference on what component we do first? Just to be useful. Do you guys? I think this one's probably a little bit complex because it requires some canvas stuff and whatnot. So maybe we won't get into that. Let's start with the simple one, with this leaderboard component. So we'll go ahead and grab this and put this into the UI, into the UI for now. So we have some reference. Yeah, my computer's running really slowly. So apologies, Tim. All right. So let's sort of break this down. If we go back to this design, and this is a skill that I hope you guys can learn as we move forwards as user interface developers. What do you guys notice about this element? Just tell me what you see. What do you notice?
Are you referring to how it's grouped?
Anything you notice, anything that you feel would be relevant to how we build this component.
The progress and leaderboard looks about the same, except the content's inside.
Aha! Bingo. So what does that tell us, team?
We can probably have like a box component and reuse it. Yes.
So there's actually going to be a couple of components that we build here. So we're going to have this box. Actually, I'll probably call this a card, right? We'll have probably the ability to have a title on that card, and then we'll have some card content that sits inside here. How does that sound to you guys?
Sounds good.
So the other thing to keep in mind as we're building out this UI is, where are we? Let me just close all these tabs down. Wow, it's running really slow. So if we go to our project, we've actually got the www project. We've also got the learn project. So Rajat is going to be the maintainer of the www. Now, the reason why this is significant is because the elements that we actually see here, sorry, not this. The elements we see here are going to be the same elements, these buttons and all that sort of stuff. This is all React. So we actually want to reuse these components across across the front end for the www website, and then also for what we're doing in the backend website. So if you have a look under the packages, we've got this UI folder, and this UI folder is going to be reused. So anything we build in here, think of this as something that is going to be reused across both projects. If there is a UI component that's specific to the Learning app, let's not put it inside here. Let's just put it inside the Learning app itself. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
Cool. So I think what we've got two elements here. We've got the card, as Susie pointed out, and then we've also got this leaderboard. Like the card will be like the base element, one of the atoms, if you will, that will sort of use multiple atoms to put together to form molecules, right? From a metaphor perspective, from a design perspective. So we've got this atom, and we'll probably put this atom inside the UI components, so it's reused, because I can imagine the www website using an element like this. But then the actual this whole element itself we'll put inside the UI, inside the Learning app. So let's go ahead and create this card component. I think we might already have one already. So let me go and load up my VS Code, zoom in a bit for you guys. You guys can see this okay?
It's a bit small, but yeah.
That better?
Yeah, it's a little
bit. If I go any bigger, I won't be able to really code properly. So we can actually see here, we already have a card element. So it's pretty basic. So let's run through what this is doing. You guys should already have this code, so you should be able to click through this with me. Now we're using functional components. Actually, this can be renamed to FC for short. So functional components, for those who don't know, instead of using a class-based approach, so having like a export class card class, right? And you have typically the render function inside React, and you return, some div, the class, right? This is the old way of doing things. And you have like component did mount. Sorry, it needs to extend React, doesn't it? React dot component, and this has like component did mount. You have some stuff in here. Right, we're not using this format for 99% of our components. You can read up on why. Essentially, having hooks, having these functional components allows us to use hooks, and hooks are a really, really nice way of composing UI. So as we build out components, I suppose that's the first step. Maybe we should write some of these things down. Put them in Slack. So, wow, this is really laggy. Tips for good UI components. 1 is they are functional. Over class. Right? So that's the first thing. Okay. Second thing in TypeScript is we can actually define what the properties that this element is going to have. All right, so let me create a new thing just to show you guys from scratch if I was creating a new element. All right, so no syntax to React. Now let's say it's a well, why don't we do it? Why don't we do the what do I call this? The leaderboard card, right? So const leaderboard widget, call it a widget. Now remember, we type this, so we have to import React. We go react.fc for functional component. Import React from React. So that's our first step done, right? Make sure it's a functional component. and that just returns. Let's just say this is going to return that card element. All right, that's the first thing. So just think about where this is relative. Yeah, it's fine for now. Okay, now, let's have a think about what this is going to take in. One question we might have is, do we want the data to be passed in, or do we want the component itself to handle the data? What do you guys think? Does that question make sense? So what I mean by that is, right, in one example, we might have leaderboard widget, and we actually pass in the users like this as an array. Right, the other example is that we don't do this, and we let the leaderboard itself, right, handle, fetch the data itself. What do you guys feel is better in this situation?
Well, for a gaming perspective, letting the leaderboard handle the fetch will be best, because the leaderboard can change at any time depending on the person's progress.
Yeah, I mean, so that brings an interesting question into, how often do we view the leaderboard updating? Do we want it to be live? I don't personally view this platform as being that real time. It'll obviously update if you refresh the page and move around and stuff, but I don't think we need to prioritize for having a live feed, especially for something as small as this leaderboard. When you think about the story, right? Are you going to be sitting there the entire time watching people move up and down, or are you going to come to this after you've done a lesson to see if you've moved up? Which one's more likely?
The latter.
So I go through, I complete the latter, right? I finish the variables thing. I get a success message, woohoo, you've done this, right? And then I go back to this page, and then I see that I've moved up, right? I was down here, but now I'm number 1. That's more likely. So I don't think necessarily we want to have something that's live. But I do agree that the leaderboard itself should handle its own data. Now, why would we do this? What's the benefit of having this?
There's any changes, it's all in here. You don't have to change to file.
Yeah, and it also means we don't have to worry about state management across the entire app. Like we could pick up this leaderboard widget, and we could chuck it anywhere inside the application, and it would instantly work. We don't have to worry about tying it to the context and all this sort of stuff, right? Like these components, they should be flexible, picking them up and moving them around. Now, we're using GraphQL for this platform, right? So, there used to be, an argument saying, all right, well, if every user interface element is fetching its own data, and we can't choose what data it's grabbing, right? We just have to access an API endpoint, and we just get everything. So it used to be quite wasteful. However, in GraphQL, what we can do is we can only request very specific pieces of information. You can get very specific with your queries, and you should only query what that UI element uses. So as a result, it actually becomes a lot more efficient and composable. So in this respect, I think the second point that we should put down is that it, generally speaking, handles its own data. Now, this is different if you're, if you've got like a page element and you want to have like a title on the page or things like that. Like that's a little bit different. But for something like this, like a widget or a standalone thing, I think it makes sense to have it self-contained in its data. All right? Do we have any questions on why we would do this? Okay, so let's jump into how we will do this. So, as you guys know, we're using GraphQL. I'm actually going to create this component inside the client because this is specific to the client and not UI. So we've got components. Why don't we put it under here? So we'll call this leaderboard widget. All right. Leaderboard widget. .tsx. So you'll notice some naming conventions here. Right, I've got the name of the. This is what I would expect to. If I was to include this is how I'd expect to write the component, and the name of the file matches that. Sometimes I'll differ and I'll have, like, for example, in pages, I'll have like a dot page, or some of them I have dot modal. A few other ones. This might be dot widget. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. So let's just grab this code. We'll put that in there. Okay. So you'll notice that we need to import this card. This card is coming from the UI, isn't it? It's not coming from inside the client. So what we need to do is actually import that. Now you'll notice on the UI under the package JSON, we have this npm package name here. Code mentoring /UI. Now the cool thing about Learner is it automatically handles this for us, so we can import it. So all we need to do is just go import UI like this, /, and then you can see it's already auto-completing for us, /components /card. And now we have that card available. Okay, just like that. So we've now got this card available, but it's sitting inside a separate project. So that's really nice. And this card can also be used by the www website. Okay, so we've got this basic component. We need to export this. Okay, now I should stop for a second. Who can tell me what I've done wrong? And I'll give you a hint. It's not within the code itself. All right, I've just started jumping into work. All right, what's the problem here? Who can tell me what branch I'm on? All right, I'm on the develop branch. So we don't work directly on the develop branch, do we? So I'm going to stop myself and go, all right, I'm going to go git. So I know that there's a ticket for this somewhere in GitHub. So go through these issues. Just find label as UI. Just to find it easy. And this was the leaderboard. So currently no one's working on this. Right now I've just started working on a ticket without updating this. Somebody else might have already started, so that's not good. So what I should do is, if no one's on this, right, just say to someone, hey, I'd like to take this. Once you're assigned, I'm just going to assign myself to this. All right. So now I'm responsible for this task. Okay. So under projects, we'll have a look. Just make sure you guys should be able to see this project. Let me know if you can't. This should be our Kanban board for everything that we're working on. So as you can see, there's quite a few things in progress already. So I'm going to go and find that user interface task, this one here. I'm going to drag this into in progress, like that. Okay, great. So I'm going to check out a branch because we work through pull requests. So I'm going to go git. So make sure my developer's up to date. So I'm going to go git pull. That's important, guys. Please make sure before you create a branch that you've done a pull on the develop, because otherwise you might be working with out-of-date information, and that's not good. So do a git pull, and then go git checkout -b to create a new branch. We're going to call this feature. So all PRs should have the feature as the feature /. Right, this is important because we're going to set up the CI and various other testing things to make sure that it only works on the feature / of the branches. So if you don't do this, it might break. So make sure you're doing this. Feature /, and then we'll call this leaderboard widget, like this. Okay, great. So now I'm definitely working on the right branch. No worries about merge conflicts and various other things. So I can continue working. So where are we up to? We've got functional over class generally handles its own data. So we're going to go ahead and actually request this data. So what are we going to be pulling down? Okay, this is going to be the list of users on the page. Now, we don't currently have a system for ranking or anything like that. So if we come through here, we've actually got some notes on this. All right, make sure you read the ticket in full. It says user profile picture is actually currently not completed yet. So this here, we're going to have to send a pretend one. And then the user rank is not completed yet either. So we actually don't have a way of ranking these people. So we're going to have to put in a couple of to-do comments. I'll show you guys that soon. So for now, let's just use the users themselves. So here's a very important thing for you guys to understand. If you're ever confused as to what we have available in our API, I'll show you a very simple way of knowing what is available. So I'm going to go cd packages API, yarn dev to start it. Taking its time. It takes a bit of time to start up this Nest.js, but once it's up, it's good. So if you see this hanging for a while, don't be alarmed. There we go. So I'm going to go to localhost 4000 / GraphQL. So this is your friend. This is your friend. This is how you test your API. And this is also how you can see what's available. So over here, I'm going to click on docs. Now look here. All right, we've got a very simple API at the moment. Or can I drag this out? Okay, I can't seem to do that. So this tells us what queries and mutations we have. For those who are not familiar with GraphQL, a query is kind of like a get, and a mutation is when you're sending something or mutating something. Okay, so for what we've got here, all right, we've got this list of users. What do you think we're going to do here? Which one of these do you think we'll use? Can you guys see this?
Yeah, you're talking about which one to use, right? Outside the user?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to use the user's query. So if we click on this, right, this gives us information on what we're expecting to get from this query, which is really nice. So you can see here, it's going to return a list of users, and each user has this format. So that's very nice. So let's actually before we start building it into our component, let's test this ourselves. So we're going to create a query. Query doesn't take any parameters. It's just going to take a list of users like this. And if I press Control Space or Command Space, this actually tells us what properties it has available. So let's just grab the first name and the ID. And if I press Run, uh-oh, it says we're not authorized. So you guys remember from the chat app how to do JWT? We've already got that available, set up for us. So if you log in with a user, you get this token. Right. And then down here in the HTTP headers, who remembers what it's called? What's the header called for JWT?
Bearer.
Bearer is the prefix. So we have bearer here. Yep. But who remembers what the actual header is called?
Authorization.
Authorization, that's the one. Authorization. So this allows you to authenticate. So let's try this. Press enter. There we go. So we've now got some users coming through. So this is the query that we're going to use on our component. Make sense? So let's go through. Now, how do we actually do this inside our component? So what we're going to do is we're going to define our query. So const users query equals. And we're going to use this GraphQL. Import this from. We might not have this installed. Yep, we do. GraphQL tag. All right. So what this does is this tells us inside here, this is now a query. It's a GraphQL query. In fact, VS Code even has a nice syntax highlighting for us. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to put this inside here, like this. See how that highlights it for us? It's quite nice. So let's have a look at our component. We've got first name and last name, and then the user profile, which doesn't exist yet. So let's just grab first name and last name in the ID. Just like this. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we're going to use a hook. So this is a query. This is not a mutation. So we're going to use query like this. This gets automatically imported from React hooks, right? Apollo React hooks. So now we're talking to our API. So what this takes is the user's query that we've defined. Now remember, this is not a string. This is put through the GraphQL tag. That's important, team. You can't just pass in query in here, right? It actually has to be a GraphQL like this. Now, what this will return is an array. Actually, no, I think it actually just returns. Yeah. So we've got data. We've got loading. We've got error. We've got a few things here. Variables. A few things. Let's just keep this one really simple. So let's just use data. Let's use these for now. Okay. So remember, this is a hook. So you don't need to worry about handling the refreshing of the data. This component will reload with this new information. That's the really nice thing about hooks. I'll show you how simple it is. It's really nice. So here we're going to have, if it's loading, right? We'll return. I think I have a spinner class or a loader. Loading, loader. Right? Again, we're importing from UI. So we're going to have a loader if it's loading. Otherwise, we want to loop over the data. So we're going to go data.map. Now, you'll notice the problem here is that what type is the data? It's any. Right, we haven't actually told TypeScript what data this is. Now, we can do this, but this is not a very good practice. So remember in our use state, we had this generic, like this.
Yep.
So what we're actually going to do is import the user. Now, here's the really cool thing. This is being imported from our API. Right? I think that's pretty cool. Let's have a look at how it's doing this. If we go to the package JSON and we look at the types, which is where it's pulling in the TypeScript information, right? Types.ts. This is all automatically generated for us. So for the front-end people, you don't need to worry about this, how it's generated. You just have to know that you can access any of this stuff. So you don't have to worry about defining your own types. All of this comes automatically from the API, and that's all auto-generated based on things like this. user entity. So for full stack people, this is important to know. For front-end people, you don't need to worry about it. You just need to remember that you can access all the types inside here. This is really, really nice team, so we don't have to define all these types manually. So if we come back to our result, hello kitchen. Where are we? So we notice we've got data, users as an array, and then we've got each user. So the way we define that here is the first argument here is what we're returning. So we've got data, users, and then that's going to be an array of user. In fact, I don't think we even need the data. I think we can just do this. So what we're doing is we're telling TypeScript, this is what we're expecting to get back from this query, as we see here. So we don't need to worry about this ourselves. This automatically gets handled for us. So now, if we do data.map, all right? If we go U for user, if we hover over this, this should tell us. I think TypeScript has just crashed. Hang on. Must be because I'm recording my screen and also doing screen share. That's probably what it is. Wait for it. It's a spinning wheel down here. Come on. All right, we'll just continue on. So this is going to type this as the user that we see defined here.
Hey Tio, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you typed user there, and you might be retrieving fewer parameters from the user query. So what do you think about this, for example?
That's a really good point. And that is
I'm sending it through the chat. What do you think about that app? What that makes is that it generates the types only depending on your query.
Where did
do
you
you
send
think
this?
that's useful, or? We are
it
using
can be.
data liger. I see it sometimes a little bit confusing, but at the same time it's useful.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off. So just be careful with that. That is a really good point. To be honest, I don't have a better solution for it. So I think we can just stick with that for now. There's probably a better way to do this down the track. So just be mindful, I suppose, when you're writing those queries, right? That it's tested in the UI. So we should be okay if we're doing like testing for each component. And if somebody changes the query or something, then it should break, and we should be notified about it. But that is a really good point.
Okay.
So let's put this under let's just say div now. All right, and then we should have this user. No, it's still linked as any. Okay, so this is throwing an error saying data is potentially undefined because it might come back with an error. So what can we do in this case? Let's simplify this a bit further. Okay, so if it's loading, just return a card with the loader in it like this. Just to simplify some of our logic. All right. Now under here, we'll say if there's an error, display the error message. Error message. I think we have that. Yep. Cool. And the error is going to be whatever we pass in. So error equals error dot message. Now, realistically, we shouldn't be putting that kind of message in there like that. Well, we should find a way to nicely handle it. The other alternative is to make sure that everything that comes back from the API can be put straight, any error message can be put straight into the user interface. In fact, that's probably a nicer way of doing it. So we should handle this. So if there's an error, otherwise the data is definitely there. And what? Data.
You still have to get in users data.
Yeah, data.users.map, and that's typed as a user now, which is nice. So what have we got? We've got first name and last name. So let's just go user.firstname and then user.last name, like this. Now that, from a code perspective, is kind of most of the logic. Let's actually try this. All right. So I'm going to go ahead into my dashboard page, which is where this is going to live. We'll put it in here. Loader, what do we call it? Leaderboard widget. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we've got that API running. Let's load up the UI now. So this UI will not work unless you have the API running. CD packages client, yarn dev. So it starts up a Webpack dev server. Localhost 8080. Just finish building. It's very, very slow today. Sorry, team. Come on. While we're waiting, does anybody have any questions on anything we've covered so far? Cool. It's still going. Frankie, if you're recording this, I'm going to stop my recording because I can't even work.
Yeah, go for it. Mine is still recording.
Great. I just stopped mine, so hopefully that should make things go faster. There we go. Okay. Great. Oops. Like this. So just log in with my secret password. Great. So that actually works straight off the bat, which is pretty cool. So we've got an error here. So we've got last name and first name are coming up as the same thing. Why is that the case? I haven't misspelt it. First name, last name. Let's go ahead and see if there's actually an error with the API. So refresh. Let's see what's coming back. GraphQL, verified users. Okay, so we've got an error with our API in that it's actually, maybe it's not an error, maybe that's actually correct. Let's check the database. Okay, so I've just, I think it might have been a problem with my insomnia when I signed up. I think I might have put first name twice. I did. There we go. Okay, great. So we actually have no problems. It actually works straight off the bat, which is excellent. Let me slow down my network really slow. Here's a great tip if you guys don't know about this, to test stuff. So if you go into the network settings and you click on online, and you come down to, I'm going to set mine to slow 3G. All right, now this is actually going to limit the amount of data that comes through. It's going to throttle it. So you can test the loading screens and things like that. It's very useful. So when to refresh, we should see loading screen pop up. It's very, very slow. So there's the loading screen, the first one. All right, loading. Great. So this was successful. This was a successful component. Now, this doesn't look exactly like we want it to, does it? So we're gonna have to do a little bit of styling on this. So let's jump into the designs again. Have a think about this. So we do want this. We do want this to be the card style. So why don't we go ahead and update that a little bit? Inside here. So we're switching over to the UI folder. Now we notice this shadow. I think that's an old one. We can remove that. And we want to have background white. Now I'll explain how this works in a second with Tailwind. Let's just see if that works for now. I'm going to take off that network throttling because that's going to make us very slow. Great. Let's have a look at what we're doing here. This dashboard actually has a white background, so we can fix that later. So actually, we're going to remove the dashboard, the background. We're going to add a border. So border, let's say it's gray 500. So this goes from 100 to 900 with different levels of intensity. Now, if you would like to see what they are, if you go under UI and you go to Tailwind config, you'll actually see all of the theme configuration lives inside here. Now, this is for the entire project, for everything inside Code Mentoring. So please, I don't think we'll need to change anything in here unless we're adding new things. But just be very careful when editing this document because this will have very big implications. But it's great to reference. So we can see here we've got these varying levels of gray. In fact, if we come into Figma, this might even tell us specifically. So if I click on this, and this will tell us, it hasn't exactly. But let's just look up that hex code. That should have it as a name. Okay, great. So the hex code's not even there. So that's when you might ping the designer and say, hey, like we're using an informal color here. So let's just approximate this as the 500. So border, gray, 500. Let's see if this works. Nope. Gray, 500. Border color. Okay, so we can see that the actual color applied. I think we've just got to go border 2 pixels. There we go. So now we're starting to look like what we've got here. All right. That's great. So the next part is, I suppose, probably adding a little bit more styling to. We're not going to change the overall layout of the page. That's kind of out of scope for this ticket. We can let somebody else handle the overall dashboard style. So for now, if we just create this component as a full width thing, that's totally fine. So notice we've got a little bit of extra padding here. So let's just click on this and see. So we've got 16 pixels on the sides. So if we come in here, we actually go to our leaderboard under the card. We can go padding. I think that's about 4. So that should hopefully give that a bit more padding, a bit nicer. Now I'm going to run through, guys, on Tailwind in a second. I just want to sort of set up this component first. Notice we've got this blue text. Let's color this blue text here. So what we can do inside this is we can go class name. We're going to go text. You actually see here it gives us some autocomplete stuff. So text primary 500. That's the main glue. That's code mentoring glue. All right. Again, if you're ever confused, come into this config. You can have a look. The primary, secondary is this green, tertiary is this red. All right. And 500 is that middle color. So let's have a look to see if that made that blue. It did. We also want to make it bold. So we're going to go font bold, maybe semi-bold. And there we go. Now we need to add a little icon for the picture. So we're gonna do a pretend one for now. So let's wrap this inside a span. And we'll add a image source. Let's just use placehold it. http://placehold.it. And then what's the size of this image? It's 30 by 30. So we'll say 30 by 30. User profile pic. Okay, compiled. And there we go. So we've got this little picture there. Now we'll add a class to it. Rounded. And what that will do is automatically give it a border radius of 50%, which will turn that into a nice picture. Or it should. Maybe it's a circle. No. Okay. So this is a problem, right? We should have this utility. So depending on how big your task is, you might actually decide, you know what, we need this. So I'm going to come in and under here, where the border radiuses are configured, we've got the default. We want the rounded one. So we'll say circle, and we'll say 50%. So that will actually fix that for us. I think we have to restart Webpack for that one. Make sure if you edit this, if you add a new thing in here, right? Make sure that you notify when you create the PR that you added that in, just so people know. Please be careful editing this document. Don't add too much stuff in here. We want to keep it consistent. So just wait for this to load. While we're at it, we've got this image sitting on the new line. So we want to fix that up. That's still not working, is it? Let's have a look at the Tailwind documentation. It just goes circle. Hills and circles. 50%. Yeah. What's this got here? Not sure why that's not working, so we'll try putting a prefix of rounded in the front. See if that fixes it. And that worked. Great. So we don't need to worry too much. That class is now in there. Now, this is a really good use case for Flexbox, having these things next to each other. Or actually, maybe just display inline. By default, with the Tailwind, by default, images are display block. That's just one thing to note. So we're also going to go inline block. And then that will require a margin on the side. Yep. So we'll just go margin left and say, margin right. And we'll say 4. Just to give it a little bit of spacing. That's a little bit too much. Bring it down to 3. That should be pretty good. All right, so the last thing is, if we look at our design, just having this title sit here. So we currently don't have a typography class or a typography component. We probably should. So in a circumstance like this, and this is going to happen a lot, guys, in that you get blocked by another task. So this is where you need to raise that with somebody like a maintainer, the maintainer of the UI, or actually go into GitHub and say, like, is there a typography element issue? And if there isn't, go ahead and create one if you feel that it should exist. For now, let's just incur a little bit of tech debt, and we'll just put in a H4. I think that's probably about a 4th level heading, I think. Yeah, we'll say H4. So that belongs here, H4, and we'll call this leaderboard. And we'll just see how this looks. And we might not have styling for the H4 already, so we don't. So the H4 needs base styles. So as we move through this, right, this kind of problem won't occur. We'll build up a base style, so it will just look good by default. But as we're moving through the early stages of UI, there's going to be a lot of things missing, like this. So if you'd like, just go through and handle this yourself. So we'll put this under the UI, under the CSS components. We've got a text here. So you can see that we're missing a H4. Right. So we'll style this exactly. Now this is going to apply to all of code mentoring. So let's have a look. What font size is it? All right, we've got a font size of 14. Font size of 14. So I think if we have a look at our Tailwind, let's go files. I highly recommend looking at these docs, guys. They're really good. And they explain all the classes and everything you want to use. So I think it'll be about a large 1.125. Maybe, no, I think it's a small. Let's just have a look. So the really cool thing is these classes, right, you can add them to elements. But if you're working inside the CSS, we're using post CSS, so we've got some extra features. The same things apply. These exact same labels apply in here. So as you can see, we're going to go text small. The font is going to be font gray. And what is this? That 500 gray. Yeah, oh, sorry, text gray. Text gray. Font is not a title. It's going to be font sans. It's going to be font bold. I think we had it under extra bold. Okay. And then the color is, yeah, it's fine. Leave that as it is. So if we save this, that should hopefully run. And now we should have some base defaults for our H4. We do. You can see that's not easy to see. So what we'll do is we'll make it a bit darker. So instead of 500, let's say 700. All right, that's a bit more like it. We also want it to be uppercase. So just simply put uppercase. Now again, guys, all this documentation for what I'm doing here with CSS and Tailwind, this is all under the Tailwind documentation. So the idea is we're not actually creating a lot of custom classes. It's all using these utilities that you see here. So get familiar with them. They're very, very useful. And we want to add a little bit of letter spacing between them, just to spread those letters out. As you can see in the design, it's not as cramped. It's a little bit more spread out. So we'll say, I think it's, what do they call it? Letter spacing? I forget exactly. As you can see, I'm constantly looking up the docs as well. Tracking, we'll call it. So we'll call it, let's say tracking wide. So we'll just put that here. Tracking is the technical term for it in a design typography sense. And there we go. Maybe even a little bit wider. So wider. That should be pretty good. All right, great. So then we have a title. We're just going to make it sit inside the center. So we'll come back to here, to our H4. We'll go class equals text center. Center that text, class name. And then we'll give it a margin bottom. So margin bottom, say 4 to match that padding there. So it's got equal padding both on the top and the bottom. And there we go. Now this is looking a bit strange because it's so large. So remember, this is out of scope for this, but let's just test what it looks like if we set a width on this. We'll say max width, say 600 pixels, a little bit less. All right, that's starting to look like the component that we have in the designs. I'd say that's pretty much job done at that point. So remember, it's not our job right now to style this in terms of the context of this dashboard. So I'd say that's pretty good. We don't have any links to profiles or anything yet, so we don't have to worry about a link. Now remember, we added this pretend placeholder image, so we have to create a to-do here. So to-do replace user profile picture when number. We'll just link to the number that we have of the issue. I think it's profile. This one here, number 27. All right. So when number 27 is completed, like that. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and do a review. We did a couple of things. So we added this large component. We added it to the dashboard. Then we added a little bit of extra stuff. We added a border to the cards by default. We added the H4 styling, and we added this circle round on here to give that round image. So do we have any questions before I sort of submit this as a PR?
I have a question, but not necessarily related to this PR.
Yeah.
It's in terms of style. So which styles should be in the UI and which styles should be in the component, the client component itself? Because I'm gonna do the header, right? The nav-bar. So I should do the nav-bar on the UI folder.
I think not, actually, because I think this navbar is only going to be used inside the app. So you can leave that. You can put that inside the client components here. You can create a header component because that's not going to be used in the www side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? That was a good question. Do you have any other questions on this?
So when you're creating a component, do you always use it, like create them with 100% width?
No, it depends. But for what we're doing here, we don't know what context this leaderboard is going to be used. So we've just let it scale automatically.
Okay.
All right, now if we're actually running a good component, see this card stuff here, right? If we wanted to actually pass in properties to this card from here, right, we have to expose that. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go export interface leaderboard widget props extends card props like this. So now, and then we type it here. So leaderboard widget props. And then we'll get these props here. All right, all these props, and we'll just pass them straight in to this card, like this. Now, what this means, this is good, right? This is. In fact, we should probably write this down as a thing. Right, handles its own data, allows passing of props to root component or root element in the component. So, that's a really good question, Frankie. In that, we might come into the dashboard and say, actually, we want to in the context of the dashboard, we want to give it a bit of extra padding. Let's say padding is now 8. Right. So we come back and have a look. It should now have much larger padding. That's because we're allowing that to be passed in. We might say, I don't know if I have a width property on the card, but width. No, we don't. Class name. Do we have class name? Yes, we do. All right. So class name. We'll say width. We'll say 64. There you go.
Okay.
So that's the benefit. That's the benefit. Now, if I didn't have this, if I didn't have that passing of those props down, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it without this. And the really nice thing is when you're defining the properties for this component, you can extend these card properties. Now that's exposed from here. All right. So this is what is called composable UI. Is that you're taking these atoms, you're combining them together to create molecules, right? And then you create those molecules and you put those together to create compounds, right? To use a chemistry term, you're building these things together from very, very small little things. Most of those small things will sit inside the UI package, and then they get composed together to create larger, more complex elements and eventually pages. That was a really good way of explaining that, actually. Well, demonstration rather of having that class name come through. So, yes, thanks for bringing that up. Anything else you guys have questions on before we create this PR? Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to push this. So here's, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So we're going to be using a new way of commit messages. So I haven't written any documentation on this. I know there is a task that LAN is working on. How we do commit messages, which sounds silly, but we're gonna follow this format. It's called commit lint. And it kind of follows this format. All right, so we have what did you do? What was the scope? Now this scope is the package that you worked on. And if you worked on multiple packages, just remove that. And then the subject is the Git message that you did. So what does this look like? and the scopes are the type is defined here. So what we did is a feature. So we'll call this a feature. That's probably the most common one. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go feature. Now we actually covered multiple things here, so I'm not going to add the scope feature, and then we added leaderboard widget. All right, and I'm just going to submit that. Push that up. Now, if I go over to Project CM, right, you'll have this button that sits here, prepare and create pull request. Boom. So it's already pre-populated. Now remember, we need to list off what we did. So what do? We fixed, and then we look for the element, the issue we had. Remembers the number. Leaderboard number 26. All right, so fixed 26. All right, added rounded circle class to base to Tailwind. All right, what else did we do? Have a look at our files. let's drop this down here. So we added the
added the
leaderboard, we added the
H4.
rounded H4 styling, thank you. H4 base styles. And we added a border. Added border to card. And that's it. Now, if your PR starts to have too many things here, one of the maintainers is going to come to you and say, look, thanks for doing all this work, but there's too much here, right? If your PR starts to get too big, right, talk to us, talk to someone, because PRs should be small. Now, some PRs are really big, like a big refactor or something like that. That's okay. It's different. But for something like this, right, you don't want to have PRs that are too large. Why? Right? Why don't we want this?
I would think that it might conflict with other.
Have a think about the person who's approved. Yep, conflicting. So that's one reason. Have a think about the poor person who has to go and review your PR. Right? If you've changed 100 files, that person has to spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, sorting and sifting through your code to make sure that it looks okay. So please keep your PRs small. That is good PR etiquette, so they say. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and create this pull request.
So what about?
So there's one last.
So what about
Second?
work that are like, let's say you have a big feature and you want to chunk it down to like little smaller pieces. Can we do like a
Yes.
PR and just make it smaller pieces? But
Yeah. So yeah, you can have smaller PRs working on certain things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So what's the last step that I need to do as someone who's just submitted a PR?
Close the tab.
Anybody know? No, because it's not done. It's not finished.
Add a reviewer.
Somebody. All right, so I have to come in here and I have to choose a reviewer. Now, this should be a maintainer. Right, a maintainer needs to approve this. So I don't know if I think Kim, are you still on the call? Nope. Okay. Might try. Yeah, we'll do Kim anyway. For UI related stuff, probably ping me. I'll be the guy who reviews your UI stuff. For backend stuff, it's going to be Kim. Or actually, you could also do Rajat. Let's remove him. Put on Rajat because he's across the UI as well. So once Rajat has approved this, right, he might come back and say, hey, we need some changes or whatever. We can discuss that here. As you guys can see in previous PRs that I've closed before, let me just have a look. This is actually one I'm working on with Kim right now. All right, is we can actually add comments on the file itself. So this PR should not be merged until all these comments are resolved. Later down the track, there's going to be a system here that has a bunch of checking. So once we have the CI up to date and all the tests and stuff like that, then every time you make a change to the PR, right, you can't merge the PR in until all the tests are passed and it's not breaking anything. So I'm gonna pretend that Rajat saw this and he liked it, and I'm gonna just him with my administrative privileges. So I'm going to be a bit of a cheat. So that's pretty much it. Confirm that, merge that in. Excellent. So now that has been merged. That is part of the develop branch. So it's part of the code base for everybody else to download and pull. So make sure you're pulling regularly, just to have up-to-date code. So that kind of concludes that. Let me have a look at the issue. So we had what was it? I think it might even automatically close them for us. Yes, it does. So that's the nice thing about GitHub and projects, is that this actually automatically got closed for us. So we come into this, you can see this got closed because it was merged. So that's a pretty nice nifty feature. And if we go into our projects, that should also be sitting in the done column. That's handled for us. There you go. So that is a end-to-end example of how you build a good UI component, PRs and various other things. Does anybody have any questions on that? Silence is golden. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that was useful for you guys. Well, we can definitely write more documentation if we feel necessary, or if you guys are ever confused about anything. We're here to help. I am not coding this project too much.